Good morning, everyone. I, Pragya, Special Correspondent at Governance Now, welcome you all on behalf of India's premier public policy and governance publication, which is below. So, without further delay, I would like to invite our experts, Shri Sanjeev Singh, ADG, Systems, Income Tax Department, Central Board of Direct Taxation, CBDT. Shri Singh is an Indian Revenue Officer of 1991, presently working as Additional Director General in the Systems Directorate of Income Tax Department. He is currently responsible for implementing data warehousing, third-party reporting, business intelligence, analytics, risk assessment, verification, compliance management, tax payment related systems, and income tax department. He is BTech from IIT BHU and MBA from IIM Calcutta. From 1994 to 2005, he has worked in Assessment Central CBS Investigation Wing in Ahmedabad. He is trained assessor in Financial Action Task Force, FATF, Standards and Tax Administration Diagnostic Tool, TAT. I request Mr. Kailash Adhikari, MD Governance Now, to welcome Shri Sanjeev Singh.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And may I take the warm pleasure of inviting Shri Sanjeev Singh ji, ADG Systems Income Tax Department, Central Board of Direct Taxation. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in our today's virtual masterclass. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And now I request Shri B Gupta, ADG EWD, Directorate General of Systems, IT. Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Shri Gupta is currently looking after enterprise data warehouse and data analytics. He has done Master in Public Administration from League One School of Public Policy, National. He is BTech and MTech from IIT Delhi. He worked in customs, excise, robotics, operations, and leadership.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, and we welcome you, sir. Shri B Gupta ji, thank you so much for sparing your time and joining us on this virtual masterclass. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kailash ji.
Now I invite Nitin, EVP Technology, GSTN. Mishra is EVP Technology, GSTN, and joined after stints with Yahoo, Walmart Labs, and Candle. Nitin had put in 20 years in the area of technology, designing and building a high-performance internet scale application. It has been an exciting journey for him at GSTN, working on 14 years in product landscape. He's an engineer and MBA and is a keen student of large-scale consumer internet technology. I request Mr. Adhikari to welcome.
Thank you so much, Pragya. We welcome Sri Nitin Mishra ji, EVP GSTN. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now I request Sri Samir Prakash, partner, Tax Technology and Transformation Answer. Sri Samir is business transformation specialist, played a key role in digital transformation journey of many Fortune 500 companies. He is passionate about landscape photography, environmental conservation, and traveling. He is helping functions tax function free their human capital and enabling tax teams to focus their resources on the value-added functions of automating their routine tax process. He has solved some of the most complex automation challenges in the Indian tax compliance system that is more efficient tax functions and realization of human interest.
Thank you so much, Samir sir, for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have your perspective on today's virtual masterclass on how technology can actually disrupt and how it has actually caused advancement in the tax system. Thank you so much for joining us.
So now I request Shri Prashant Chaudhary, Director Government Business, VMware India. Shri Chaudhary is responsible for building mindshare across customer partners, larger ecosystem for entire suite of VMware portfolio. Prior to joining VMware, Chaudhary has served in organizations like Athena Technologies as CEO, and prior to that has held various senior leadership at CA Technologies. And he has 24 years of industry experience across IT services and infrastructure. And I
thank you so much, Shri Prashant Chaudhary ji, for joining us. And I guess with this we complete with the introductions. And I once again wholeheartedly welcome all of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us in a very important discussion. We all know the importance of technology and how now in a post-COVID world, technology is the one who's actually bringing us together. without any physical presence. And technology has an impact on the various ecosystems. And today we are here to discuss a very important ecosystem, which is the tax system. And over to you, moderator sir, Prashant Chaudhary, and welcome to everyone, all our delegates as well, to the virtual masterclass organized by Governance Now on how technology has actually caused disruptions and advancement in technology can actually help the tax system. Over to you, moderator sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Adhikari, and thanks everyone for being part of this panel. And I'm really privileged to be a moderator here. I think with such a esteemed panelist, which everyone is there. So I think without further ado, I'm sure everybody is eager to share their views on what's really happening. And I think today's topic is obviously there was disruption, and I think it's everybody knew that because of the pandemic, COVID actually raised some of the questions around a lot of government organization, and especially in we're talking about, we have people from Ministry of Finance. So I just want to go back to Sanjeev sir. I think I'll start with you on a question saying that when the COVID scenario happened, and obviously the biggest challenge was with the government was actually to take care of the disruption which happened on the services. With this being new norm, I think I'd like to hear your views in terms of how people are going to adapt to these changes. From a technology perspective, there were a lot of innovations which are happening around this, some new disruptive technology, and this cultural shift. How do we really adapt to this in the coming time? So, let's say your views on some of these points.
Good morning, everyone. The income tax department, last 10-15 years have moved to e-filing in a big way. All returns are e-filed. The main area of interaction with the taxpayer has been scrutiny after e-filing is done. Last 2-3 years, we have been working to develop our own e-assessment SOPs and way of working. So to that extent, from a process perspective, income tax department was well ahead of time because the processes of communication and issuing of notice, getting of responses were all e-enabled. But what actually happened after COVID came is that people could not go to the office for doing their work. To that extent, we had to innovate, and we adopted VPN technology for getting remote access. That has brought back the productivity of work. Of course, income tax department has taken a view that will not issue any adverse notice during this period, but using this access to do a lot of housekeeping job, looking at the files and preparing questionnaires. So everyone is working back at the pre-COVID productivity levels. That is true. And what is happening more is, from a technology standpoint in system directorate, working from home, working on a such kind of video conferencing, we are able to have a much larger and much focused discussion between the technical and functional team. So that has brought more focus on issues, and our meetings are much more, I would say, more fruitful as compared to here. And going forward, I believe this is, it will not really go best practices that we are working more due to this kind of situation. I think we'll try to leverage more of it and innovate more and more. So I think the changes which were started by income tax department, because it's work from home, they have become more and I think we need to leverage. Thank you.
So, thank you, sir. I think thanks for starting such a interesting point of view. And as you said, I think the department is at a pre-COVID era, which means I think right decisions were taken at the right time, and there was no impact on the processes, as you said. And I believe, sir, I think with video conferencing and everybody, I think, as you said, the discussions are having more focused and productive right now, so that there is a business continuity not impacted over there. So I'll come back to you, sir, on some of the leading questions on this point. Maybe I'll go back to Gupta ji at this stage. Sir, your views in terms of how the department took care of some of the business processes which were running, were there some changes done in the existing environment, how the technology was leveraged to make sure the business continuity remains.
Good morning, everyone. Just to brief everyone, customs was quite ahead of time in adoption of technology, even in the pre-COVID area. So this year, we actually completed 25 years of our customs EDI processes. So a large part of the customs work deals with our other stakeholders, namely the importers and exporters, taxpayers, and of course, we do have a lot of applications which are department-facing applications. So COVID really threw a very, very big challenge to the department, that especially the customs applications, these are very, very dynamic and very, very live applications. And especially after COVID, the department had a great challenge that a lot of COVID relief material was also coming in. A lot of essential supplies and logistics supply chain had to be maintained at a very, very critical level. So it was a great, great opportunity for the department to leverage the technology to see that all these essential services are maintained, and we are very happy and satisfied that we were able to do that. So we have a number of stakeholders for adoption of technology. We had to work in very close partnership with our logistics operators, namely the port authorities, the custodians. So before that, the department also had to do a great challenge of first equipping ourselves to equip others. So we were really very, very fast off the feet, first to enable the departmental officers through VPN or through application virtualizations to enable them to provide these services to importers and exporters. It also gave a great opportunity to the department for doing a lot of paperless transactions. So we converted this crisis into a great opportunity. In customs, there were certain documents for which the importers and exporters rather had to take printouts and use them to get the deliveries from the port. So one great achievement in the post-COVID part has been that we have been able to deliver now all these sort of delivery documents right into the mailbox of importers and exporters through encrypted and QR-based delivery challans. So I think this was a great challenge for us in leveraging the technology to maintain the critical applications of customs. And the government had sort of given directions that all, let's say, pending refunds of the taxpayers should be expedited and paid out to the taxpayers in this period. So I think we were really able to leverage the technology to help our officials process fast refunds to enable the taxpayers and the exporters to have the benefits from the government.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And I think, as you rightly said, I think the first step is to equip yourself before you can actually go and equip others. And I think very nicely done by the department. So, Mr. Nitin, I'll come to you, and adding to, while obviously speaking about how the business continuity was done by CBDT and CBIC, the starting point was VPN itself as first step. But what we had in the industry also was there was a requirement of moving ahead because there was a requirement to connect to office infrastructure, data center, not just data centers related infrastructure, but desktops where users can connect to their environment or provide them a secured VDI based infrastructure over there, export the applications to handheld devices. So do you believe this is also one of the area which actually department should look at, how to make this secure and provide a seamless access to end users? Your views.
Absolutely, Prashant. I mean, effectively, if you look at it, from GST systems perspective, while our taxpayers have always been using electronic ways of interacting with the portal, one of the challenges that COVID-19 actually threw at us was to enable these offices to work from their own homes. Luckily, because given to some of the Northeast states where the network connectivity is not very good and they did not have the privilege of having a dedicated MPLS link, they were actually enabled on VPN. And we had this VPN solution right from day one. Luckily, what happened was we actually, enhanced this infrastructure and provided work from home solutions to all these officers. So if you look at the number of registrations that have been approved since 22nd of March, we have had about 50 to 60,000 registration applications that have been approved by officers of Model 2. Of course, CBIC is more advanced in terms of they have their own backend systems and business processes. So they are anyway integrated through API. So if they enable their officers through VPN, they are able to work. But most of the Model 2 states, when we say Model 2 states, their back office application was actually hosted within GSTN. So they perform their statutory activities like refund processing, registration approval, assessment, DRC07, assessing DRC03. All these business validations of the department was actually done on GST portal using VPN as one of the interface. So I think yes, in terms of if you look at the way the whole administration, the tax and the government administration evolving is more around. It is more beyond simply automation of processes. If you see the way the technologies are being evolved, for example, you look at CBDT, moving ahead with pre-filed self-assessed return. Look at the way the whole refund aspect. There was absolutely no paper involved when it came to taxpayer compliances. I think the administration, the tax administration, and the government, not just in India but across the globe, are actually looking at that the lines have actually been cut off. There is a not transparent layer where they are overlapping over each other, where technology is also driving some of the administrative processes, in times to come. So that's how I would say how COVID-19 actually provided an opportunity, for us to be more digital than what we were earlier.
Yeah, thanks, Nitin. And I think you said it very well. The technology is actually a key driver right now, not just to provide access to infrastructure, but I think even it's impacting how the processes are defined right now. Thanks for that point. I'll go back quickly to Mr. Sameer. Mr. Sameer, you work very closely with corporate organizations also from a taxation perspective. You have a vast experience around that. We thought we'll hear your views. How are some of the non-government organizations dealing with the current situation and coming back into business continuity?
Yeah, Prashant. So when I hear my colleagues from the department, I think one thing is very evident. I think in terms of the technology adoption, the tax department, tax administration is ahead on the curve than a lot of the companies that we work with. And they're all vying to be where I think what we hear Nitin talking about, how they have taken technology. But what has happened now is that people are seeing this as a really watershed moment, because we've seen some disruptions happening within tax functions and their ability to not file returns on time. So this is accelerating the need to speed up the digital transformation of these organizations. So they're now looking at cloud in a big way. They're looking at see how they can drive more automation through RPA, AI, and so on. So they reduce the need for dependence on individuals, which is very prevalent right now. So I think clearly, I think there's lots that can be learned from the work has been done within tax department. But the journey has started. So we see so many conversations happening now in the last 2 months, where clients are very eager to go on the journey and accelerate this whole transformation.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sameer. Sanjeev sir, coming back to you on one of the leading question and what we heard, obviously there were ways and means to provide access to infrastructure, but at the same time, the medium for access became mobile devices. Medium of access became some of the infrastructure, laptops, desktops, which were at home. Do you believe there is a need to look at a solution to make it more secured environment, because otherwise there may be a risk of cybersecurity attacks happening, maybe some leakages of critical infrastructure? So just wanted to have your views on this.
Yeah. See, it's a paradox in the income tax department. See, when we allow taxpayers to work on internet and they are using our e-filing portal to upload very sensitive information, we are confident about that because we have planned for it. Our entire system, which is facing to the user, since we are on MPLS, we thought that will give us some kind of security in terms of or the assurance part. But the moment this entire COVID-19 happened, we realized we have to give access very fast. So we went for a phased approach. We have some systems where people work. There are some sensitive systems. So we had a discussion and we enabled VPN-based access to our users, all users. Of course, we realize that the security, the traditional security practices which we follow in terms of coding and penetration testing, all is one part of the story. But I think we are now also moving to an advanced security, secured application, which will also look into the device which gets connected to us, which means the device has to be recognized device. The device has to be hardened. So these kind of an internet control over the device. So these new security controls we are looking at putting to make sure that the cyber attacks are minimized. Of course, the key thing is, I think, hardening of the endpoint device. And the fourth part is the document rights management control. Means somehow if the document lands on the device and device gets stolen, at least it should be completely encrypted. So these are the things we are working on. Most of the things we have done. That is a way forward.
Thanks, and I think you raised some very important point. I think endpoint device hardening, as well as if the document is leaked, how do we protect, and that's been taken care by CBDT. Gupta sir, quickly on you want to like to add some points?
Yes, as Sanjeev said, we hold a very, very sensitive taxpayer information with us. And therefore, security of the data is absolutely paramount to CBIC. Secondly, as I said, we are part of the logistics chain, essential logistics chain supply for the country. And that also gives us a very, very sensitive sector, places in a very sensitive sector to prevent us from any sort of malicious attacks on our infra and the services. So as Sanjeev said that we too have a similar system that while our external taxpayers and the other partners, importers, exporters, they connect to us through internet. But within the offices, we had a very, very robust intranet system based on WAN LAN, which sort of connects us to thousands of locations across the country. Now, immediately as COVID came in, we really had to adapt very fast to see that the services remain interrupted. So we had a more layered approach that for some very, very essential people, we had to put them in office, let's say data centers and all. Secondly, some of the people we sort of authorized to work on the VPN with usual precautions. The devices had to be hardened. We sort of took care that all the devices have the required antivirus, data download, theft softwares, endpoint hardening. And based on that, we kept a proper audit trail and a layered security operation wherever whatever happens on that endpoints, we are able to monitor all those. Now, the third category was a large number of department officers who had to work on the applications, namely for processing refunds to the taxpayers during these tough times. So because it was a larger number, to them, we thought that VPN may not be the best source possible because it would open up for a larger numbers. So because we had a Citrix layer between us, so we used a application virtualization layer for these officers to enable them to work on the applications for home. So in this way, we sort of kept a very, very layered approach that a larger number of officers, we gave them the application virtualization. To some of our own inside people, we went for VPN with these security features. And that's where sort of we were able to have a mix and match of both these technologies to provide the essential services.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Nitin, I'll just change the topic here. And while you know the reality is most of the government departments today are on the journey of building private cloud and also looking at a hybrid model now where some of the, in context of Ministry of Finance, there is most critical data lying with department and they like to keep it within their own premises. But also the reality is with new modern application, public cloud is also becoming a reality. So how do you feel the journey will be moving ahead? When should the departments be talking about setting up private cloud and also leveraging public cloud as a hybrid model? Over to you.
I think one aspect that all of us should be very, very aware of, that the data that the department keeps is very, very sensitive. It basically has a direct impact on the economic aspects of the country. So that is why the security has to be paramount, and there are certain guidelines, established by various departments, including BT, where the use of public cloud is only limited to some non-critical services. Having said that, I think there are a lot of ideas that are floating around. For example, at least in some of the countries where the taxation system of filing happens on a remote cloud, on a public cloud, in a very encrypted way, which then later processed and pulled into the data center, where the payload is actually open and all sensitive information is only available in the data center. So it actually provides a sort of a framework where while you can actually scale infinitely when you're actually facing citizen or citizens application, your processing can actually be despooled at a later time, right? That is one model of handling it. There are a lot of other solutions that are now coming in. For example, there are a lot of cloud providers that are providing cloud in the box, where you can actually have a true hybrid solution, where some of your non-critical, non-sensitive, non-period sort of an information can actually sit on the edge on the public cloud, but then it can seamlessly integrate in a very, very homogeneous sort of an environment with an in-house cloud. At least I'm aware of one of the very large cloud providers have actually provided something called Outpost, which is actually cloud in a box, which can be installed in a data center, in your own data center, and can have a seamless integration where you have homogeneous services. For example, you want to use object or you want to use Lambda architecture, you can actually have a balanced sort of a processing framework where you can actually keep non-sensitive, non-critical information on the edge in public and despooled at later time for processing and for other activities, administration activities. So that is where I see the whole ecosystem is actually evolving, and one of the very important points that was made by Sanjeev sir was around the preparation that you do for your taxpayers, for a citizen scale services, where you actually plan that yes, people are going to come from internet. You have to put all your security infrastructure. While the tax departments basically are in a very secured intranet and intranet or an MPLS sort of a framework, the security and it is actually considered trusted. So the security barriers are actually a little lower than what you put on the internet. I think with this invent of public cloud, maybe the taxpayer services or tax officer services or the administration services can also be brought through the cloud in a very secure environment, where there could be a point-to-point hub and spoke sort of a model where tax officers can also use public clouds for assessing and performing certain applications, giving them an infinitely possible scalability on solutions.
Thanks, Nitin. So I think one important point which you raised, obviously there is a need to set up a cloud within the department, which allows actually automation, orchestration, and I will say consistent infrastructure management. So Samir, before I come to you, maybe I'll go back to Gupta sir and ask him that while Mr. Nitin said that, yes, I think it should be open to a public cloud, and also most important, couple of points he mentioned was security is one area which need to be looked at when we go on the public cloud, and second is portability, that the flexibility should be with you, that any point of time, whether the portability or migration of services back to your data center, that should provide an maybe a seamless process over migration. So any views, sir, from your side on these points?
Yes, as Nitin rightly said, a lot of adoption of public cloud internationally has happened. Now, Gartner says that almost, around 50% of US government agencies have also adopted public cloud. So for a taxation department, as Nitin and Sanjeev both said, what remains at the core and of utmost concern is the sensitivity and the security of the taxpayer data. But there is also sort of lot of power of the public cloud which can be exploited. So I think every organization will have to work out its own way how we can reap the benefits which come along with the private or a public cloud, namely the scalability part. Now, typically for a lot of core applications for a big organization, they also tend to be a lot of legacy applications. So yes, portability of such legacy applications does remain an issue. unless we go on to again modernize the core applications which can sort of move along the public or private cloud seamlessly. So that's a challenge for any big organization, which till now has been used to working more on old legacy applications. So that's a challenge which the large organizations need to deal with.
Sure. Thanks. Sanjeev sir, will it be I will say a great experience for people who manage within your department, maybe a private cloud or public cloud, if they are able to actually manage both of them in a consistent fashion, whether not really worrying about where are the workloads lying, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud, they are able to deploy consistent security across both the environment and manage as if it's one single infrastructure. So from a technology innovation perspective, do you see this will definitely help, because both private and public clouds are becoming a reality in every government department?
See, what we have been doing income tax last few years, we have trying to converge our applications. So income tax, no, last 10 years came up with their own projects, as we call them, for handling the particular kind of function. For example, we have a separate e-filing project. We used to have a TPC project. So last 2-3 years, we are trying to converge all of them into a common infrastructure. So it is a combined project. So convergence is helping us to leverage the capacities and our infra across projects. So for example, e-filing peak loads are on particular days. So we know which for those days, maybe the capacity is X. Remaining days, it is only 5% of that. So we have and we have a lot of analytics and data processing work also. So of course, converging and reusing the infra always makes sense. But what we are also looking at is how can we leverage hybrid cloud. As of now, public cloud is limited to, as we have discussed earlier, very, where sensitivity is less and information is not so critical. But looking at the way participation engagement is happening with the entire taxpayer community, we believe that we can leverage something like a hybrid cloud, where the sensitive part of the data and application is within the department, but we can use the edge servers, or I would say hybrid the cloud environment for something like cloud bursting, where we can take a lot of power when we need it, uh, uh, depending on the peak filing state. So what we have to plan out is the complete the security part has to be seen, so that the entire packet which is transmitted is secure. The processing only happens in our private cloud. So I think it is very exciting. We have been discussing various models how this can be done. Definitely we'll go for it. We are examining, and maybe within some time we'll come up with some kind of a implementation of this.
Nicely put, sir. Thank you very much. I'll go back to Samir. I think you've been hearing from Gupta sir, Sanjeev sir, and Nitin ji. And you work closely with the organizations, corporate organizations. I think they are the first one who take quick decisions whether when they have to go to public cloud. But at the same time, are you also hearing when you consult with them how they are deploying their data center? Are they also thinking of just moving completely to a public cloud, or they are also thinking about hybrid model, as Sanjeev sir said?
So Prashant, what we see is different trends in different sectors. So if I were to look at financial services, we see a lot of hesitation in going towards cloud, and they have been a bit more cautious in taking that journey. Whereas there are other organizations who have said that our strategy is cloud first. So anything and everything should move into public cloud, because they feel that even from a cyber perspective, it's safer to be on a big cloud, public cloud, where the level of security is much more higher. Uh, in our view, I think eventually public cloud is something that you cannot ignore. But right now we see more hybrid models where organizations are keeping some more sensitive data with themselves or in private cloud, and then moving on some of the HR and non-sensitive data into public cloud. But one interesting thing that we see is the acceptability of cloud is going up more because of what's happening in GST. Because in many ways, what is happening is most of the enterprise transaction data is moving to GST, and sometimes via some ASP GSP solution providers, which is a cloud, right? So that is really forcing them to rethink their old, concern that they see around use of public cloud. But I think the journey to cloud is again getting accelerated, and COVID has also acted in a big way to add a more boost to that. That they're also seeing this as a way to increase the resilience of their business and their operations.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks for your views. Mr. Nitin, I want to come back to you, and it won't be fair on me if when we are talking about so many critical applications, various CBDT, CBIC, GSTN, and we know that some of you have already on the journey of modern applications where containers are being used to run microservices, and there are more and more applications being thought of being converted from legacy to modern applications. So a question here is how do we decide the need of modern application? When do we decide that to convert a legacy application for modern application, and what challenges you foresee in doing this based on the existing environment or the way applications are architected right?
See, Prashant, I think Samir made a very important point, right? Cloud is not something which is being ignored right now. Each and every organization, depending upon their risk appetite and the criticality of the data, financial institutions, tax administrations, banks will always be very, very sensitive towards, adoption of cloud. And there are multiple reasons to it. They have been running their enterprise applications for a very long time now, right? Now, enterprise applications come, if you look at the erstwhile enterprise application, they came in form of black boxes. If you look at an Oracle Fusion solution, or you look at SAP, you look at any of the enterprise solutions, I mean, there is very limited amount of flexibility that is available. And all the services are actually bound together. So effectively, you cannot look at your database as a service separately from application or a stateless layer, which is now becoming very, very important, right? You need to be able to simply pull out the middleware and replace it with something which is far more scalable, at any one given moment. And these are going to be some of the challenges where the first step towards moving to cloud is to make your application cloud ready. I mean, you cannot put one after another. There is a very important aspect that you have to first think of your application in different tiers, and what tier you want to put in the cloud is going to be a very critical decision. As I said, in the journey towards a hybrid cloud, I mean, if at all an organization decides to go down the hybrid journey path, they need to really look at their application layer by layer, right? Not in terms of black boxes. They need to basically look at, for example, to start with, I can put all my stateless applications with no data persistency to the cloud, while keeping the all data processing and data integration very, very tightly bound within the local data center. Homogeneity is a very important aspect. Whatever services that you have in the cloud, it will easily and more seamlessly integrate with applications which are running within your data center. They are basically running the same platform. I think open source adoption by the enterprises, and I'm just, I come from that background, I'm nothing demeaning against or nothing against enterprise applications, but I've been, all my 25 years in my life, I've been looking at open source as an ecosystem which basically provides the flexibility. Of course, it has its own set of challenges. For example, while the agility is there, there is always a risk of, suboptimum code going out in production, but then it requires certain skills to manage that. So I think some of the challenges that the organizations going forward, whether it is tax administration or banks or any fintech, I think few of the challenges that they have to address now. One is to look at their application, make it cloud ready, how they can actually take layer by layer and what layers they can put on cloud and what they can keep inside. The second is, of course, upskilling of resources. Effectively, unlike erstwhile cases where the technology expertise came from the enterprise applications, the business expertise came from within the department. I think where it is evolving is you see these two things are getting merged together, where administration as a specialty now runs with technology. It doesn't run anymore on top of technology. So that upskilling and then incubating and bringing in, you cannot outsource administration for sure, right? So you have to bring in the technical expertise within the department and within the organization to be able to handle applications which are basically which are working on multiple. Third, of course, there is going to be a cost associated for migration, but I think looking at the way the cost of real estate, the cost of while the cost of hardware is coming low, the cost of real estate is not coming down, it's continuously going up. So you have to create most, per square foot of the data center space that you actually take up. And it's only possible when you start sharing services, which is what the direction the public clouds are actually offering. So this is how I visualize going forward, or what's going to be the path forward.
Sure, thanks. And Sanjeev sir, as Mr. Nitin said, we have to look at applications layer by layer, and CBDT have most of the very critical applications where sensitive data lies of each citizen of India. And these are complex applications developed. Some of them may have been in the journey of being converted into modern apps on containers, Kubernetes. Sir, your views whether this is the journey what CBDT is also looking at, and may not be porting them on public cloud as of now, but converting them, migrating them into modern apps, running into a private cloud environment, and maybe later moving to a public cloud. Is that the thought process?
Yeah, I think macro services as of now, that is what we are aiming for everyone. And last 2-3 years, whatever new projects we are starting, we are doing on macro services architecture. So whether it's CPC 2.0, where we are converging, it is all on macro services. But what we are now looking at, all our legacy applications, and how do we bring them from a monolith to macro services? It's a journey. I think it's extremely challenging because I'm handling one transition myself, and Nitin have been helping me out in design and architecture. I think it is fairly challenging, but I think the benefits and rewards are going to be immense. So number one, I think the loosely coupled kind of architecture which GSTN has put is something which is very, very powerful. We look forward to exposing not only data, but also our capability to the outside world, especially when you're going for seamless exchange of information using API. So for entire that thing to work seamlessly with real-time kind of performance, and the moment we go for asynchronous kind of data handling also when this volumes come, I think we need to, at least the interface part, we have to move to a microservice part. What we have designed is while keeping the core as the way it is, but all interactions and important functions which needs to be published or shared, especially when you're looking at some kind of a common government platform of sharing data. I think that is the way forward. So we are all working towards it. All new projects are as of now microservices architecture enabled, Kubernetes and all. Existing projects, we are when we are looking at a seamless exchange of information using APIs, we are also working on that. Of course, I understand that it is not easy because if you greenfield, you develop a microservice architecture, it is to some extent you design it that way. Moving a monolith to a microservice architecture is challenging. Plus, it requires great degree of expertise in managing these microservices because fault will keep on happening. You have to plan for a fault to happen. So there are faults which are going to happen. Your agility is very high. Flexibility is there. You can scale up very much. But I think the kind of required skill levels are much more higher than the earlier monolith application. So that is a challenge, and we are working on that. We are hopeful that we'll be leveraging these technologies any other time.
And thank you, sir. And Nitinji, I think what you said, these are really encouraging words. As one of, maybe I will say, VMware also is one of the biggest contributor in Kubernetes world, especially in the even in open source space. When departments like CBDT, GSTN are looking at that journey, and we also see actually a good road ahead in terms of contributing to such technology initiative. Gupta sir, your views on what Nitinji and Sanjeev sir said.
Yeah, GSTN is actually a very, very good example that how they have kept their system very, very fluid, and they have also allowed a lot of people to innovate on these services which GSTN provides. So I think that's a great advantage to a lot of service providers which sort of use APIs provided by GSTN to give very, very value-added services to the taxpayer. Now, as Sanjeev is also saying, an organization like CBDT or CBIC, we are in the middle, whereas the ecosystem around us is changing. The taxpayer or the logistics parties who sort of work alongside us, we have to also see that that is also a very fast changing world, be it airline operators, be it the port operators, be it the other logistics operators, So of course, the need of the hour is to give very, very agile delivery, very fast delivery with the flexibility of scalability also. So that is definitely need of the hour. The second challenge for a department of us like us would be that we also have very, very big monolithic applications, which was sort of over the time designed in a typical waterfall approach. So the challenge lies here how we can sort of navigate ourselves where we have large monolithic, very, very core applications running, which cannot be sort of, taken apart in a short of time and turned into sort of a ideal containerized or a microservices sort of a architecture. So this is a really challenge. How do you, it's like changing the parts of an aircraft while you're flying and ensuring that nothing comes down. So the changing of any monolithic application to a containerized or a microservices also comes at a cost. And we need to have skill on both three parts, tools, people, process, both. So I think the way forward would be to make a very, very cautious but a determined journey to have best of the both worlds, where some of the core things can remain like that. And in that particular ecosystem, we have a very, very agile, containerized or microservices based delivery, which provide a very time-based, fast delivery to the satisfaction of the other stakeholders.
Thank you very much, sir. Samir, I'll just maybe change the last part of my panel discussion and last question for the panelists. So while we spoke about the infrastructure and we spoke about private public cloud and how applications are being modernized, and this is, I'll call it a dynamic environment. So when you talk to the organizations, are there concerns about cybersecurity risk and how they can build capabilities to detect, analyze, and respond to security threats which are happening? So from a security perspective, what are organizations talking about? Before I go to other panelists, your views.
So Prashant, before I go to that topic, I just want to touch upon the earlier subject that was being talked about by Sanjeev and Mr. Gupta. See, what I think all of us are heading towards, what I want to call it an API economy, where the exchange of data with the department and even within different stakeholders will be all seamless through APIs. I think we see that happening more in the West, Europe especially, and also in the different sectors and also on. So I think that while the task is very huge, but there is a lot of expectation from companies that they're able to access information in a very simple way through APIs, be it through IceGate, be it for GSTN, or in the future on direct tax side. So I think I'm glad that we are hearing that that's the direction that the even department is thinking, and I think that's a very, very important journey. It will enable the kind of efficiency that doesn't exist today. So I thought I'll add that aspect, that's key to this entire digital journey that we're seeing right now. On the topic of cybersecurity, I think again more with COVID, we are seeing that the importance has gone up significantly, and the budgets that are being being allocated in this area is also huge. This is also becoming a big trigger for transition to cloud, because not every organization is equipped to do it on their own using their own data centers. So sometimes they see this also as an advantage of using an Azure or a Amazon and so on and so forth. But yes, currently with people working from home, different devices being connected from different areas, the cyber security is becoming a very center stage topic with boardrooms. And we see again a lot of new conversations where clients are rethinking the way they operate in the light of cybersecurity.
Thanks a lot, Samir.
Yeah.
And maybe a final question, Sir Gupta ji, Nitin ji, maybe quick words from your side, that do we need to really look at security as an intrinsic security approach to where we work on detecting, analyzing, and responding to the threats quickly? Is there a need to have a holistic approach to all three methods when it comes to security perspective. So, quick views, Sanjeev sir, starting with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is very important. Correlation of various events give a very different picture. So I think that is paramount, especially when we have handle sensitive data. I think the comprehensive approach is what is so. I mean, there's something which whatever we do is less. So we look at doing it in a more smarter manner also. So whether it is you know encryption, access policies, classification of data, encryption of data in rest or in flight, or who can download, how to be encrypted, how the logs will be correlated. I think that these are all very important things because things are changing very fast. During COVID time, when there was attack, we were on our toes because we knew a lot of cyber attack would happen. So anything can come from outside, from inside, especially from work from home environment. I think we have to be extremely cautious. So any single or approach will not work. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Nitin ji.
I think it's a cardinal sin not to talk about security when you talk about large enterprise scale applications. For us, security has been an overarching theme. We have over-invested into the security framework at GSTN. I think that has really helped us. We have had team which is continuously monitoring, and the kind of threat actors and the threat vectors which are being thrown at GSTN have been very, very significant. We've been able to thwart it, and I think it has to be as an overarching theme. Whenever you're thinking about a large enterprise scale internet or even intranet facing applications, because this COVID-19, one thing which has become very important is that you need to create an ecosystem of your trusted environment also, right? When you say trusted environment, your tax officer is also, while it is a trusted environment, but when they are working from home, they are coming over the internet and they are also vulnerable to threat actors. So that is why a holistic approach and overarching theme around your enterprise application, enterprise scape across the board is absolutely important. You need to make sure that you have continuously monitoring on place. You have event correlation engine always available. You need to really over invest in the type of in the volume of events that you can process, and you should be continuously, because the threat landscape is actually evolving with every passing day. You have new kinds of attacks that are coming in, so you got to stay a step ahead, and that is only possible by investing into right set of technologies and having the right set of skill set to support those technologies, because you cannot take away the technician from technology. I mean, that is one important aspect that I'll always say. Open source brings in this challenge, because in the enterprise scale applications, you always have a product and you have a product support to actually land upon. But in open source space, the things are so agile and so vast that you have to have right skilled resources to actually look at it and be able to respond to any untoward incident that may be directed towards your system. So that's how I would like to put it.
Thanks, Nitin. Gupta sir, final word from you.
Yeah, of course, cyber threats is a reality of life, and as they say, the best news is when there is no news. So I think a much more holistic approach, especially after work from home came. There are a lot of users in the department. We are a large organization with sort of 30,000-40,000 people trying to access the application. And there are a lot of sort of anticipations of where people want the access on the BYU or bring your own devices sort of a structure. So I think I would look at cybersecurity in two parts. A lot of time we should also be investing in people, trying to educate them that, look, this is not something which can be ignored, and you really need to be careful on the endpoint devices, especially when you are working from home. This is one part of it. Education of the users within the ecosystem is also a great investment, which often gets overlooked in a large organization. The second part is the tight infrastructure, which Nitin and Sanjeev both spoke about encryption technologies or about containerizing the data to prevent any sort of unwarranted leakage. The third part, I would also say that a lot of things behind it, where you can you have the ability of sort of log mining, running proper track and trace, doing the audit trail to sort of see that if at all, even within the organization or from any endpoint, there has been any sort of unwarranted access to the place where it was not warranted. So I would say first, the education part. Second, using technology to run a tight ship so that there is no unwarranted leakage, backed by a proper audit trail, log mining, and track and trace incident management.
Thanks, sir. So before we get to the question from the audience, I think we have a small presentation by Mr. Pankaj Shukla. He's Director System Engineering with VMware. So, and I'll come back to you maybe towards the end. I'll just do a quick summary and take that question. So just bear with us for 10-15 minutes. Pankaj, over to you. Yeah. Again, you may want to help Pankaj with projecting his slide.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. Shelly, if you can give me the access to share my presentation.
You can do that. Then we can see your screens.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Prashant, and it was really nice to hear from our esteemed guests here, especially because they are at the forefront of the usage of technology at a scale which is kind of not seen anywhere globally, even for organizations like us. So thanks a lot for your perspective on some of these areas. And I think you touched upon cloud, microservices, containers, endpoints, security, and everything. And today's world is about something like tech in the age of any, where you want to use anything and the technology has to support it. So that's the topic today of my presentation. And I think I just want to give 15-20 minutes the VMware's perspective on some of these topics. So if you look at VMware over the last 5 to 10 years, this is what we are trying to do for our customers, where we are trying to enable a platform where you can run any application, whether it is monolith or it is a microservices based application on private cloud, hybrid cloud, or multi-cloud, and provide an ability to deliver those applications to endpoints and to end users irrespective of where they're sitting, whether at home or in the office. And in the COVID world, we know that what are the challenges there. And then kind of make security intrinsic to each of these layers. When you're building application, build security there. When you're building cloud or infrastructure, build security right inside there, so that it is not bolted on from that perspective. And all the products, solutions, and technologies which we are building at VMware are geared towards basically looking at this vision to realize for our customers. And we have kind of, after hearing all of you, we have kind of aligned our vision and strategy in these 5 pillars, that we know that most of you are at different stages of the technical, the digital disruption in each of these areas, which is hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, private cloud, building modern applications based on microservices, and kind of Kubernetes becomes the de facto standard there. Then how do we actually transform the networking and security, and how do you connect different pieces of VMs, containers, clouds, data centers, endpoints, branches, etc. That itself becomes a huge challenge, as networking traditionally has been tied to the boxes, individual boxes which are there. And then finally, how do you enhance the experience of end users? While during the period of COVID, the priority was to provide access to end users through VPN. Now the people are looking at, in the longer term, that how do you enhance their experience as well and secure as much as possible. So what I'll do is that I'll spend a couple of minutes on each of these topics. I will not take much time, but I'll just spend a couple of minutes on each of these topics, that what are we at VMware doing in these things. So if you look at the cloud piece, so you start with something like private cloud, and if you're trying to build a private cloud, obviously you need physical infrastructure, you need virtualization management, where you want to software define all compute, storage, network, security, load balancing. You need to have some kind of container management platform, and most probably it will be Kubernetes. And then you need to have automation, orchestration layer, and a management and operations layer from the performance management perspective to deliver these services like IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and anything as a service. Now, what we have done is that if an organization wants to build a private cloud, we have tried to make it pretty simple by building this platform, which we called as Cloud Foundation. Now, this Cloud Foundation is nothing but an integrated compute, storage, network, security, virtualization with automation and operations layer, including which can support the VMs as well as containers, wherein you can stand up a private cloud within a matter of days. And then this is something which makes the journey to a private cloud pretty simple. And we have done this for multiple customers in the country today. And a number of the government organizations, PSUs, banks, ITS organizations are using this as a technology today. Now, the same thing, and this at the core of this Cloud Foundation are these technologies like for compute virtualization, vSphere, vSAN for hyper-converged infrastructure, which is software-defined storage, NSX for network and security virtualization, we realize, which are kind of the basically one of the most adopted and by far the most adopted technologies worldwide. So these makes the ingredients, but we have brought these ingredients to create the stack in which we have added the lifecycle management and automation to bring that entire platform in a very simple ways. Now the next thing is that how do we build a hybrid cloud and multi-cloud? And I think we heard from Sanjeev sir, Nitin sir, and Mishra sir that eventually they are also looking at in some cases to build hybrid and multi-cloud, because that is something which cannot be avoided as of today. Now what we have done is that we have partnered with these providers and we have brought the Cloud Foundation layer to each of these providers. So for example, there are NITI panel providers like TCL, NextGen, etc., who use already VMware Cloud Foundation. You can have your private cloud built on Cloud Foundation. We have a partnership with AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM, Oracle. Almost all top cloud providers today have that Cloud Foundation platform running, so that you can have a consistent infrastructure sitting there in those cloud platforms, so that you can have portability and mobility, scalability, and whenever you want to go to the public cloud or come back, or maybe tomorrow if you want to go from one public cloud provider to the other public cloud provider, technology should not be a problem there. That is what we are trying to address here. And in this case, the partnership with VMware, with AWS has been pretty special, where we were working for last 3-4 years with AWS to design this service, where the Cloud Foundation is available as a service from AWS data center, which is there in Mumbai as of today. And what we do is that Cloud Foundation, if you have built it in the private cloud, the same is extended to the public cloud in terms of VMware Cloud on AWS. One of the things which Nitin sir just spoke about, the Outpost, for example. Now the Outpost is also available on VMware Cloud Foundation. So think of a situation where you have a consistent Cloud Foundation layer, which basically makes compute, storage, network, containers, and all those things software defined, and then you kind of run your applications on top of that to extend it from private cloud to public, or from back from public cloud to the private cloud. And at the same time, we have also integrated it with native AWS services like S3, Lambda, Redshift, which you will be eventually using for most of the advanced capabilities which typically public clouds provide. Now, one of the unique things which we have done here with this service is that we provide nodes with the underlying infrastructure managed by VMware rather than VMs, which means that if, for example, you want to take this service, you will get hosts and nodes and not the VMs, which you are not aware that on which host they are running. Are they sharing with other customers as well? So that way, from the security perspective, it becomes kind of a private cloud sitting in the public cloud space. So it's kind of makes the best of both worlds being managed. Some of the customers which we have adopted basically have solved the migration challenges which earlier used to take kind of months and years. They have been able to migrate it in matter of days, where we can provide the functionality of live migration, live mass migration of workloads from private to public or back. So this is what I wanted to share from the cloud perspective in a brief manner, that how do you build a hybrid and multi-cloud management across multiple providers. Next, on the modern apps, I want to touch upon is that you are aware that VMware has been one of the leaders in virtualization, desktop virtualization, private cloud and hybrid cloud platforms. But over the last 2-3 years, VMware has invested heavily in terms of building in-house capabilities as well as acquiring leaders in this space. For example, the companies like Heptio, Pivotal, and Bitnami, which we acquired over the course of last 2 years. Heptio, for example, was created by Joe Beda and Craig, who were the creators of Kubernetes at Google 10 years back. Now the entire workforce of Kubernetes, including Joe Beda, is part of VMware and building the VMware's strategy for modern apps and Kubernetes story. Similarly, Pivotal, which was kind of owning most of the Spring and Java platform and the Cloud Foundry space, that is also part of VMware now. Bitnami is something which, as when you start building microservices applications, you need open source packages which needs to be tested, scanned, etc. Bitnami has been the leader in providing those application catalog of packages which are scanned with vulnerability scanning management and those things when your developers start developing those applications. Now we have put together all these technologies, and as Prashant said, the VMware today is basically the second largest contributor to open source Kubernetes after Google, and this is continuing in a big way. So what we have done is that we have combined all these three things to basically come up with this product suite and solution, which is called VMware Tanzu, which basically addresses three things: build, run, and manage. That how do you build modern applications in terms of how do you code the applications where we provide enterprise supported version of Spring Runtime? How do you package those as a container with Tanzu build service and the application catalog, as I said? And then we have associated services in terms of if you want to build modern applications or maybe convert the legacy applications into modern applications. This is one part of the tools and technology solutions which we provide. On the run part, we provide an enterprise supported version of Kubernetes distribution, which is an upstream Kubernetes. Not much changes there. It's an upstream open source Kubernetes, but VMware provides the supported version of that along with all the associated technologies like backup, networking, security, etc. And that Kubernetes platform we have provided, which you can run on your on-prem on VMware infrastructure, or you can run on the public cloud as well. So as you start building your modern applications on Kubernetes, open source, maybe Tanzu, then you get the portability of that Tanzu platform across multiple clouds if you want to move those applications. The third one is that a number of you would have already started the Kubernetes and the microservices journey where you might be using other distributions of Kubernetes like OpenShift or the community version of Kubernetes. And then today you are at the private cloud, tomorrow you might use it at the public cloud. How do you basically manage and monitor across these different distributions of Kubernetes, which will eventually have as your teams start moving along with this journey? So that manage part basically provides the entire observability, the management across multiple Kubernetes clusters and teams and clouds, and the governance across those environments. So, so this is what we do from the VMware Tanzu perspective. One of the unique things which we have recently done, where we have re-architected the entire vSphere, our virtualization platform itself on Kubernetes. So what we have done is that we have integrated Kubernetes inside vSphere. And the way the benefit what it provides is basically you are able to get an ability to manage Kubernetes pods and clusters and containers along with virtual machines from a single pane of glass, which kind of makes things very, very simple for users, especially who are starting the Kubernetes journey, or you know that it's very complex basically to if you start the Kubernetes journey and the kind of technologies and skill sets you need. This kind of simplifies that entire thing. At the same time, from the performance perspective, as we know that many customers ask for bare metal performance where they do not want to run it inside virtual machines. By integrating Kubernetes inside vSphere, we have been able to provide a capability to run pods and containers directly on hypervisor rather than inside virtual machines. So both options exist. If you want a bare metal performance, you can run it directly on the ESXi layer, which is the hypervisor, or if you want to run it on VMs, that option also exists. So this is kind of best of both worlds from that perspective. So this is briefly which I want to talk about from the modern apps perspective. But then what it is important is also to how do you connect all these pieces and how do you kind of build security intrinsically to each of these layers. So what we have done here is that we have tried to make most of this networking, security, and load balancing functions in the software, so that you can decouple it from the hardware devices as much as possible. Not entirely, it is not possible, but as much as possible, so that when you are connecting multiple clouds, multiple data centers, VMs, containers, it kind of becomes easy there. So that because if these functionalities are there in the software, you can program it, automate it. That is kind of which makes it simple. So NSX is that platform where we have software-defined networking in terms of switching and routing. We have added the capabilities of layer 7, layer 4 firewall with IDS and IPS, advanced load balancing, GSLB, WAF capabilities, service mesh, which is required for containers and microservices, and the WAN, which is the branches which you want to connect, which are as of today connected with MPLS and routers, which are legacy devices. How do you make it software defined WAN? So from networking and network security perspective, this is what foundation layer, which is NSX. From the endpoint perspective, again, we know that traditionally most of the organizations rely on antivirus and HIPS type technologies basically to handle malwares. But today's landscape and threat landscape, and as all of you mentioned during the panel discussion, requires a completely different kind of technology basically to address the current security challenges, where you should be able to basically investigate, you should be able to create a kill chain, threat detection, you should be able to respond, create an early warning system. Basically, most of the new age security systems, especially for data center and cloud workloads, is dependent on is basically geared towards application whitelisting rather than signature based antivirus technologies, and that is where EDR and app control comes into the picture. Now VMware acquired this company called Carbon Black. Some of you who are from the security background would know, but this is one of the most popular and leading brands which came up with this concept of endpoint detection and response, threat hunting some years back. Now, very popular in new age technology world in US, EMEA, and some of the APAC markets, not so much present in India. But this comes to VMware, where there are two kinds of portfolio which we offer. One is from the cloud-based security, but then we also offer EDR and threat hunting and application whitelisting and application control technologies from on-prem perspective as well. So both from the network perspective and security perspective, making it software defined, inserting the security functions inside the network, software defined network technologies, and at the same time bringing Carbon Black, and now Carbon Black is kind of being integrated into the vSphere container and applications portfolio which we offer, so that you can have it completely agentless, and rather than adding it as an afterthought. So this is in summary. I wanted to just briefly talk about the security. From the digital workspace perspective, you know that VMware has been one of the leaders in mobile device management with its AirWatch mobile application management, its AirWatch technology, and application and desktop virtualization with Horizon. Now that entire portfolio has been converted into a unified platform, wherein you can basically, if your users are using multiple types of devices sitting at multiple locations, how do you manage those devices? How do you deliver the application and desktop virtualization solutions across those devices to end users? And how do you kind of build intelligence and API access with that entire platform? So that Workspace ONE is that platform which basically kind of addresses in a unified fashion across multiple types of devices, users, and applications, and how do you basically enhance the experience of end users? This is the platform which has been built. Now, as we know that at this point of time, if you do not talk about the pandemic and the post-pandemic world, especially in the technology area, then no presentation is complete. So putting all these technologies together, we see a number of customers are looking in the longer term that they're kind of relooking the entire IT architecture, that how do they enable a future ready workforce tomorrow, which people might work remotely, Some of them might be in office, some might of them would be using cloud and so on. So here what we have done is from the end user perspective and the future ready workforce perspective, you have workers, and then those workers need to basically access applications and data services. Then they might be using different types of devices, different operating systems, sitting at different locations. We need to provide connectivity to applications and data to those workers through those endpoints. And then those applications and data services can reside in multiple clouds, private, public, hybrid cloud. And then kind of what we need is these capabilities to be built in when we enable the future ready workforce, which is identity and access management. How do you monitor, observe, how do you report, give a single pane of visibility across all these environments? How do you secure the endpoints? How do you secure the communication between the worker and endpoint and the data services in clouds? How do you provide the elasticity and scale wherein you might work in the on-prem, then you can go to the public cloud, and probably tomorrow you can then come back also to the on-prem, or maybe go to other clouds. And how do you do this in consistent manner? So what we have done is that using the technologies which I just spoke about, we have created a remote working solution sets, because all customers and all organizations might not be using all of these things, but they are at some stage and at least using some of these things. So that is what we have done. We have tested this architecture in our labs, and we have come up with reference architectures which we are proposing to customers, that if they are looking at a future ready workforce, that how does the technology look like from all these perspectives? How can technology help there? These are some of the things which we are doing. Briefly, I wanted to cover. So as I wrap up, as I said, that these are some of the priority areas which most of you are working, and we'll be happy to engage with you if as per the requirement in any of these areas. So that's it from my side in the time. So thanks, Prashant, and happy to take any questions. Back to you.
And thanks, Pankaj, for being quick and crisp. Pragya, do we have any questions from audience which we can actually raise to esteemed panelists?
I am just reading them out. In terms of preparedness, how different vertical of government named CBIC, CBDT are placed with respect to sharing information infrastructure, data, application, and storage?
Okay, so Gupta sir, Sanjeev sir, I think the reference was CBIC, CBDT. Okay, you want to repeat the question in case, or sir?
So in terms of preparedness, how different verticals of government, basically how CBIC, CBDT are placed with respect to sharing information infrastructure, data, application, and storage?
Okay, I'll just give you an overview of what income tax is doing. I mean, income tax typically is, asking for information in the form of return. We have been showing information to the taxpayer so that the return can be prepared. The big change what we are bringing in is one, that we are planning to collect information from various sources, so that the return, most of the return can be pre-filled, so that the taxpayer should not, for example, a lot of people are facing issues in, preparing the section related to securities market transactions like share of sales. So what we are trying out is that all this data should be taken from the third-party information sources, and it should be available as a pre-filled return for the taxpayer. So which means we are sharing the information out to the taxpayer, and we believe that taxpayer should be the one who is seeing it. The second aspect of what we are working on is a very big ecosystem around consent-based exchange, which means if the taxpayer has given a consent to a third party and that consent is recorded, we would give them information packet which can be integrated into the business processes of the third party. It could be a bank, it could be other organizations. So that is the second part of it. Third is where we are also sharing very basic information to the financial institutions for, I would say, implement the law. I'll put it this way. For example, we were facing challenge in looking at people who are withdrawing large amount of cash and initially not filing return. So the strategy again is very clear that we would then have a higher rate for such people. Now the bank, how does the bank come to know which rate they have to charge? For that matter, they need to understand the profile of the taxpayers. So we have come up with a utility where we show to the person who can come and search that what rate needs to be charged, which is based on the filing status. So gradually, if you look at it, the three streams we are working on: sharing data with the taxpayer itself for lower compliance cost and ease of filing of return. That is number one. Number two, sharing limited information, very limited information, to the financial institutions so that they can implement the law, income tax law, in a more effective manner. And third is sharing a lot more information, which will be all consent based with third parties, which will be encrypted and authenticated. So when we look at this kind of sharing, we believe the entire stakeholder ecosystem will connect to income tax, and this will make the compliance of taxpayers and entire environment more, voluntary compliance will be promoted. So this is the broad strategy we are working on, and I think in next maybe few months we'll see a massive change coming. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gupta sir, you like to add something?
Yes, on the information sharing part in CBDT, because we very closely work with our logistic partners. So like Sanjeev was saying, pre-filled forms, we do try and collect some information from our partners. For example, the custodians, the port operators, the shipping lines, so that we can integrate the information given by them into our transactional processes and not ask for the same from the importer or the exporter. Now, as far as the outward information to our traders is concerned, our IceGate website has a number of utilities. So any sort of trader will be able to, or is even right now able to, track and see the status of their transactions, the status of their documents at each step as they're appearing. Now, we are also delivering this particular information, the status of their transactions, through mail and through SMS also to the individual traders also. Now, some of the key messages which will allow the port operators to do their transactions faster. For example, if the consignment has been cleared. So we do share these messages with the port operators so they can give the faster discharge of goods in the hand of the traders. Now, one very good initiative which has happened in the customs is our single window platform. So there are a lot of government partner agencies who are required to give statutory clearances to the goods before they can be handed over to the customers. These could be agencies like Food Safety and Security, the Wildlife authorities, the Plant and Quarantine authorities. So by and by, what customs has done is that through this single window platform, we have connected all these partner agencies onto one single particular platform. So whenever any information is filed with us, the limited fields which concern the partner government agencies for them to give the clearances are shared with them, so that we obtain their no objections online within this single window, so that for the user, it is one single unified process for the transaction system. So this is how we share the information within the partner government agencies to the benefit of the traders.
Thanks, sir. Again, any more questions?
We'll just running out of time, so we'll take just one more question, which is for Nitin. Nitin, there is a question for you with respect to COVID-19 situation. How difficult is to adopt technology changes with respect to information security solutions? And there is one more question specific to you. What are the specific security attacks that were neutralized by GSTN? So any specific example?
Okay, let me take the first question first. COVID-19 situation, effectively, the way the GST system was designed, and luckily, in fact, the VPN solution was probably, which was necessitated by the need of, the connectivity issues that we have in Northeast. We actually scaled up the same infrastructure and we were able to bring the officers to the system very fast. Effectively, our team actually worked overnight, and within a night we actually enabled about approximately 5,000 plus officers. We still have we still have a headroom available where we can enable more officers. It may not have been a challenge on the system side, but definitely, it may have been a challenge on the officer side, because in most cases, by policy, I think not many officers have access to laptops, laptops or desktops at their homes. Now, securing their assets, which are actually at a distance, sitting in their comfort of home, where they are not able to come to office or bring their desktops/laptops to office. I think securing those assets would have definitely been a challenge. While while L3 VPN provides a certain layer of security, but it is also vulnerable to the localized attacks on the desktops. So that is one challenge that I definitely see the states and officers of some of the states would have definitely faced. Second aspect is around training. Effectively not to fall for a phishing attack, for example. Not to install something which is unauthentic. Some of these things where these trainings would have probably been given, but would have been given either a long ago or would have been not very relevant. They are to be refreshed now. So these were the two main challenges, as I foresee, would have faced while bringing officers, remotely to work on the statutory compliance activities that they are supposed to do. So that was the answer to the first one. The second is effectively everything in the book. Top 20 OWASP vulnerabilities, buffer flow attacks, many types of DDoS attacks, the partial TCP sync flow. We've had attempts also, coming in. So everything in the book has actually been, and we've been able to thus far thwart it. We have not had a single incident where a single, the threat actors could not cross beyond the, 3 or 4 hops away from us. They were stopped at our edge itself. But then, looking at especially during the COVID-19, and we suspected that, we will be of area of interest. A lot of people would be coming and attacking us. I think our team was actually at guards, both from GSTN as well as from our MSP. We were continuously monitoring. The monitoring is still going on as we speak. But then effectively everything in the book was actually subjected to GSTN, and I'm sure this is true for even CBDT or CBIC or ISK solution for that matter, especially during these times.
So Pragya, before you do vote of thanks, I'll just take a couple of minutes to sum it up and give.
Yes, please summarize, and then I will request.
Yeah. Sure. So I think it was I'd like to thanks everyone. It was a great discussion, and I think we touched upon some of the topics which are in need of the hour. We spoke about how each of the department and some of the corporate organizations are looking at business continuity, providing secure access to their employees and also the citizens of the country to access critical applications by providing access to critical infrastructure. But there's also a need to making it sure that these environments are secured and new technologies can be looked at. Private cloud, public cloud, hybrid model are the reality now, even where the data is very critical to Ministry of Finance and departments like CBDT, CBIC. But the good thing is now there are steps being taken to make sure that how the environment can be deployed in a hybrid fashion where private clouds are being built, but leverage public cloud to some of the applications, and as Nitin also said, that create applications in various layers and keep some of the layers protected, but maybe it is a time to go to public cloud with some of the layers of application over there. Security will always remain a concern. It cuts through everything, whether it's access by an employee of a department through a remote location or within the data center. I think everything needs to be protected, and there has to be a holistic approach. How do we manage from a security perspective? And last but not the least, applications are heart of any infrastructure, and I think we all depend on applications today to function. We need to really build a model. We need to really have new technology innovations coming in to build new, I will say, the applications which are more scalable, which are more portable, easily to access. I think that's the journey from a modern app perspective we are all moving towards. So thanks everyone. I think it was a great discussion. I definitely look forward to connect with each one of you. Thank you very much. Pragya, over to you.
Now I request Mr. Kailash Adhikari, MD Governance Now, to share a vote of thanks on behalf of Governance Now subgroup.
We can't hear you, Mr. Adhikari.
Sir, I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pragya. And firstly, I'd like to thank all our esteemed panelists, starting from Sri Sanjeev Singh ji, Sri B Gupta ji, Sri Nitin Mishra ji, Sri Pankaj Shukla ji, Sri Prakash ji, and to our moderator, Sri Prashant Chaudhary ji. Thank you so much for joining us in our today's virtual masterclass. And it is our endeavor at Governance Now. We have recently completed a decade, and that we focus on certain important topics, which are ranging right from infrastructure to banking to tax, as we handled it today, and to various other matters of governance being our core focus. And all the deliberations of this particular masterclass will be compiled by our editorial team and will be on governancenow.com website, open to all, access to all. And with that, I'll also like to thank all our delegates who joined in our masterclass today. Thank you so much to all our speakers, delegates, and sponsors. And once again, thank you to all our esteemed panelists. Jai Hind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
जी कैसे हैं आप? नमस्कार। नहीं कोई बात नहीं। जय श्री महाकाल। नहीं, मैंने कहा आज जब आप पूजा करें ना पे आते हैं, DTH पे आते हैं, भारत देश में हैं। क्या है कि इसके ऊपर सबकी जीविका आधारित है। प्रसार भारती का बहुत अच्छा रहा, अच्छा लगा माता जी के कृपा से। अपने चैनल क्या है कि अपना सबकी जीविका है कि आजीविका उससे जुड़ी है। हर जगह बस हर एक केबल
सर को म्यूट करो यार, सर को म्यूट करो।
हमेशा हर जगह